one of the things we did by doing the white papers, we got to know some of the oil companies pretty well. And so what people may or may not know is, so Chesapeake just announced the location of 7 divisions going into a facility in Louisville. We actually did all the site work. I mean, they were looking at properties all over, but they were coordinating through Chris Johnson, our staff, to get information on sites and availability, and we'd actually recommended the Louisville site. There was a live competition, went from Massillon to Canton to Louisville to Alliance. There could have been in Carroll County, but it was a competition, and at the end, what I enjoyed was that they respected our knowledge of sites in the area, and that's what we should be doing, is the knowledgeable person about that. We also had the role in Baker Hughes, and so Baker Hughes is probably the worst kept secret, but obviously they're going to buy a piece of property in Massillon. Alan Harold called me last week and said that the plat had been recorded here in the county. The word as of Friday was the contract was on the way from Baker Hughes to Massillon Development Foundation, and Miller Trust is the owner of the property. It's close. Sometime this week, who knows? Then they may close.
What does Baker Hughes do?
Baker Hughes is in well field services. So they're the group that goes out there and helps maintain and operate these wells. It's a 100-plus-year-old Texas company, very great reputation in the industry. Chesapeake's their major customer. What happened with Baker Hughes was they were planning to spend more money and capitalize the facility, but when Chesapeake started slowing down and some of their issues, Baker Hughes put a hole on it and said, let's just get the property now and position our site so we can grow in the future. And the message that Baker Hughes has given to Americans, or Perry and people in Massillon, is that we don't buy a 107-acre parcel and build on it, but it's just, we got to let the industry come back. And that's part of the decline in natural gas prices. So you know, I can tell you that Stark County would be well served by having Chesapeake as a major oil explorer here, having Baker Hughes as a major well provider. You know, there's an effort now to try to count up all the other companies that are coming in, but those are the big ones in that. And so that's pretty exciting, and we think it gives ground to efforts people say in Canton or Stark County is a new shale home. I mean, we've got the kind of market that these companies are looking for, and we've got the chance to work with both of them. So it's been a really interesting experience. It's a completely different industry. They don't tell you a lot of information. It's hard to connect the dots. They're very private. But it's part of our future. We have to get to understand this industry a lot better. I mentioned the joint venture between Rolls-Royce and LG. One of the things you may not know about is that as we look in the future, this goes back to the point about attraction and ways to make sure oil shale doesn't become the dominant industry growth. When I first joined the board back in 1989, in the 1990 time frame, we were much more engaged in entrepreneurship as a way to grow business and create jobs. There was a time when, in 1995, Dick Price was our chairman. We went through a strategic planning exercise. The result was we took a look at all of our programs and tried to do a cost per job analysis of them. And when we did that, what we found out is helping to bring a company in or helping a company grow, it was a cost per job of $400 to $600 per job, which seemed to be a pretty good investment of money to do that. At the time, we owned 3 different buildings, one in Alliance, one in Massillon, and one in Canton. We had the former Timken Research Facility on Savannah, 8th and 9th in Savannah here. Our cost per job was $10,000 a job, primarily because we had 250,000 square feet of old buildings, utility problems, fixes, costly things to do. We came up with an idea in '95 that that's a really expensive way of doing economic development. So the result was we decided that we would take people we had in our buildings, we relocated them out to private space. Somebody had a garage or a building, we put them there, we helped pay the moving expenses. We sold our Massillon building. We had to buy our way out of a lease on the Alliance building, which is now the former Crane building. And ultimately, we moved our offices downtown, and we raised the old Timken Research Facility. We also had a small little equity capital fund, which never made a loan. People, private entrepreneurs, put money in it. I forget it, we were capitalized about $500,000. Just wasn't the time. 2 years ago, I went back to the board, starting to look at all the incubators going on in Youngstown and Cleveland and that, and I said, sometimes a good decision in '95 is a bad decision in 2012. I think we need to investigate this more. So we set out on an effort working very closely with Stark State, Kent State Stark, now the University of Mount Union, the Canton Regional Chamber, the Y-Start program, Small Business Development Center, Kent State, kind of putting together a mechanism. Did some visits to people like Lorraine Community College and that, and said, shouldn't we be back in this? And the answer was yes. But the condition was, why start the process if you don't have venture capital? And so very quietly over the last year, we've been working towards raising angel capital funds, investor funds, to go into putting together a Stark County-based angel fund that would work in multiple counties, with the goal of trying to raise so much money and then trying to get the state Third Frontier program to match one-for-one the amount raised. Thursday, we're sending a proposal down to Columbus. Our partners include Jumpstart, Tech Growth, which is based down in more southeast Ohio on that. We've teamed up, put a team together. We're submitting a proposal to ask for a one-to-one match on $700,000, so we could ultimately capitalize this at $1.4 million. The idea being, if you just talk about entrepreneurship and you don't really have money that really brings entrepreneurs out today, like what happened with the city of Canton, their entrepreneurial lunch, and they got jack hooks, and they had like 90 proposals, of which 14 were really excellent. We're missing that, and our view is it's time to get back in the game. So we're submitting a proposal Thursday. The state's going to go through 64 applications. It's a competitive round. At the end of November, they'll talk about who won funds. We have uniquely positioned, hopefully, our proposal has, if you take a look at two things, if you take a look at oil shale development and the amount of newfound wealth of people in our communities that might be looking to not only use that money to continue to build the economy and also look at supply chain opportunities, helping to bring companies in supply chain here, that we think we're uniquely positioned in about a 12-county area to get state funds to help us continue to develop oil shale, particularly through technology funds. And so, you've got to find your niche, and we think that's the niche. So it'd be nice to come back in early December and announce that we won this grant. But we're also working very closely right now with getting some support from one of our larger foundations about setting up a smaller set of funds to do what they would call initial pre-seed investments, 20, 25,000, solves a particular technology need, something that begins to position people along the idea of building a business. If you take a small pre-seed fund and an angel fund and you combine the Stark Development Board Finance Corporation in the middle, you begin to have a capital base for each of the different markets. And so in the long run, we think it's time to get back into helping start companies and helping take small companies who have aggressive plans to grow a product or a new technology and drive it. And in the long run, we think that has to balance out our business attraction efforts so that we look at our resources and we say, you can never forget existing companies. That's the base. But it's just as important in the future to have money available for entrepreneurship as working through our relationship with Team Neal to attract business. Simply because the competition is really tough today, and it's hard to be one of 8,000 places in the world where a company can locate. Grow your own, help your own, and grow your own, and it seems to be what we think is the future. So that's one of the things we're doing now, and we hope to announce some good results in December. I can tell you that it's very likely that, as you know, through the developments work with the Port Authority, that the Port Authority has had the Crane property, where we used to be at one time, up for sale. The likely candidate we've talked about is Mack Trailer, who is a growing manufacturing alliance, Lexington Township area. A good indication we may be able to close on this in the next couple of weeks and actually sell them the property and that. So, that will be good because it takes capital reinvested in the Port Authority to look for other capital projects down the line. So I just wanted to let you know that. I think within the next month that deal will close. We're working through Team Neal on trying to develop a regional economic plan for all of Northeast Ohio. Phase one of kind of an overview has been done. What are the key metrics? And they're going to be involved in a deeper dive, which should be done about April, to say, here's what the region, here's what we really should do in terms of strategy. We have deliberately held off a new strategic plan until we know, not the end of the plan, but where they're really going, so we can rewrite a plan that doesn't do any good to have a Stark County plan that's different than what the state is and different than what the region is. We want them to be consistent. So we've got a pretty good feel for what they're doing. It ties a lot with what we do, but we're going to probably in next April begin a more of a strategic planning process over a couple months and relook at 5-year plan for the board, because we're now walking in a plan that's about 7 years old, although it's working. But last thing I just want to talk about is, so as I mentioned, Stark Development Board, after it goes through 3 years, has to look at creating a new fund drive. And so, as many of you know, in April we launched a new fund drive to fund the board for the next 3 years, from July of this year to June of 2015. Based upon the results we had, I'm looking forward to that. Right now we've to date raised about 1.3 million. We think it's possible to get to our goal of 1.8, which is a pretty aggressive goal. One of the things that we understood last year was you as the commissioners, and lacking a sales tax increase, did not have the capability of funding us. And so, you know, we get it, and we're a partner, we get that. What I'd like to suggest today, though, is it'd be really important, and I think, Tom, we had a chance to talk to you and Mike early in the year about why we think that's important for the county, and with the idea of trying to see if you could contribute, starting in 13, back into funding the board. We previously had a multi-year contract. We'd love to see that again, but we really need your financial support. So one of the things that I think is important for you to know is, number one is, the business community over the life of the board has probably invested $10 million in Stark Development Board. It's 90% of our funding. We think there is a role for public support, and you position yourself before to do that. We think that's really critical right now to help us do some of these things. So we would ask, as you begin to look at your budget for 13, that at least have us over and talk about the plan. We'd love to see if we could get some additional support, maybe in a multi-year deal. One interesting thing is that we did a little bit of an exercise that I think, Tom, we presented to you and Mike. We took a look at simple measure. We didn't spend a lot of time with this. I just have one copy of it. What we did was we took a look at projects we worked on from July 2009 to February 2012. And there were about 30 companies that invested $340 million in new capital investments in Stark County, all of which projects we worked on. If you take a look at the county's portion of the property tax on that $340 million of capital investment, that over 3 years have produced $684,000 roughly in new taxes for the county. Then we took a look at the sales tax and the county's portion of sales tax over the same 3 years, and it added another $400,000. So in essence, over the 3-year period, and it's 32 months, it wasn't full 3 years, but close, we helped the county generate about $1 million in taxes, of which, if you would have paid us, say, $100,000 a year, it's about a 3-to-1, 4-to-1 leverage, more like a 3-to-1 leverage. Our point was, I think we're actually producing taxes for you. So it's hard to fund things sometimes, but if you get something that's creating more value than what you're having to contribute to it, because the business community is helping.